Well, Flagship I actually think was a little more maybe reactive than proactive in the way the company got started. We left Blizzard. It really wasn't our intent to leave, but it's what happened. And so the next day, Dave Brevik and Eric Schaefer and myself pretty much decided to start a new company. Really formed out of the crucible of the fact that we all love making games, that we suddenly were there looking to do something new and decided that, well, why not do it together?
I think that there was a lot of different factors that came into it, but eventually 9 of us left Blizzard North. And for one reason or another, either in some cases people left because of a kind of a negotiation process that was going on there, and some of us left because frankly our bosses had left and we wanted to go and work with these guys that we really liked working with.
Really the thing we wanted to do when forming Flagship Studios, if you wanted to put it in a mission statement term, was to be able to make great games. And that's a really simple idea, but creating games that were easy to access, that people could play, that we could get out to as many players around the world as possible, and just focus on making really quality products, making just the best games we absolutely could. It's something we've always wanted to do, something we've always strived to do when we were at Blizzard, and so for us in starting a new company, that was really, really vital, was just really focusing on everything we could do to make just the best games that we could possibly do.
Pretty quickly after all that occurred and the dust started to settle, we had a company of 9 of us, and we had a game idea that was formed pretty quickly, even before I joined. And I joined about a week later and was employee number 1. And we had no place to work yet. We had just this kind of idea. We had a phone number that was out there that different publishers could call and try to contact, and we had. We didn't even have a company name because we kept trying to debate over that, and everything's taken and it takes forever to figure out what to name your company. And we decided to start working out of my house, which we did for about 13 months. Come on in. So this is where Flagship Studios had its first offices for about 13 months. We had anywhere between 8 and 13 people working here. Upstairs here we had the conference room and our executive area with our CFO, our hiring manager, and our CEO, Bill Roper, sitting here, just kind of filling up the entire room. Over in this area, we had the programming pit with Dave Brevik, our Chief Engineering Officer, myself, and our lead graphics programmers all sitting in here. And then down below here, we had an art pit where the rest of the founders worked, from backgrounds and characters and design early on. This is where we first talked to our different partners about what we wanted to do and gave our proposals, argued over which publisher we were going to go with and what things we were going to do. And this is really where the company lived for at least 13 months.
Our first offices was pretty, I think, classic in terms of how a lot of companies get started, how gaming companies get started, in that we worked out of one of the guys' houses. We had that almost stereotypical starting off in the garage type thing that happened, and it was really great. I actually think that even if a company had the wherewithal day one to get into an office and be fully set up, that they shouldn't do it. They should actually start someplace that's a lot more shoestring, a lot more, almost kind of thrown together in some ways, just from the standpoint that it really forges a really strong bond between the people that are there.
You know, I'd wake up and start to work, guys would start showing up and driving their cars, packing the driveway full all the way to the street, filling up all over the street with cars, and we'd fill the place up and work till late, and then everybody'd go home.
You know, you're hanging out all the time together, you're kind of in tight quarters, you automatically do things together, you're having lunch, you're spending time together, and it really lays that strong foundation for that solid team that really almost functions more like a kind of a crazy family in a lot of ways. And I think that's a great way to set the tone for a company.
The fact is that the development of the IP is a process that took us a long time. We came up with an initial idea, and then, you know, through that we've kind of modified it over the time. It'd be, you know, one person would contribute in one way and then another way, and it'd be neat here, let's try and design some of the factions and things like that. And this all came about as a process of a long development. So it wasn't an overnight process. And so coming up with an IP now is a lot different than it was before. And at the same time, we want to do something fresh and cool and different, and yet it also has to be a little bit similar in order for people to really understand what it is that you're trying to do.
The original concept for Hellgate was pretty much our first idea the day we left Blizzard, as David Brevik threw out the idea of doing a first-person shooter meets action RPG. And we just took it from there. Some of the major hurdles we faced were as a team, we had never made a first-person game before, a full 3D game before. So we knew we had to develop our own engine from scratch. We had a lot of engine needs that other games don't face, like randomization of levels and 3D collisions using a mass amounts of characters and monsters. So we knew we were going to end up making our own engine, and that was one of the biggest hurdles, was just developing a prototype for that, deciding what we wanted, and moving from there.
We sat there on day one and talked about what is it that we wanted to do, what kind of game do we want to make. And a few different ideas got thrown around, and then Dave pitched this concept at a very high level that was Diablo 2 meets Half-Life 2. And the idea behind that was coming up with a game that had all of that constant action and RPG elements and randomization and collectability and all these different things that made the Diablo games so popular, but then mixing that with the immersion, the first-person possibilities of a Half-Life 2, the storytelling that we could do, and really kind of combine these to create a pretty unique product.
Hellgate really kind of goes into a new area in the current market. It's much different than any other game out there. So I don't know if it really brings something to the game market so much as it's just, you know, it's just so different than anything out there that it's almost creates its own genre. You know, it's action RPG, which is similar to the way we did things in Diablo, but there is no first-person shooter with the depth that we have, or, you know, so in that way it's much different than the other games out there, and it has a lot to offer in that it expands kind of, I think, in some ways expands the first-person shooter genre, and at the same time it's a lot different than other MMOs out there, and in a lot of ways it carves out its own niche in the market, and it's much different than anything else out there. And so I think it brings kind of, I hope, something a little refreshing and something different than everything else out there.
We have as a corporate philosophy that we like to provide more value for the gamer. You know, we want to provide more value for less, and so we sat around talking about it and thought, well, you know, a lot of gamers like you know, a good single-player game with an online component in the Diablo style, and so we thought, well, we're going to go ahead and do that. A lot of people like the ongoing content of subscription, and so we decided we're going to do that too. So we're kind of trying to be all things to all people here and provide everything in the box
from an ongoing commitment to making new content and new areas and new adventures and items and loot and monsters and everything, as well as providing a full product that if you never went online, you'd be getting your money's worth and more out of the same box.